The reality is most athletes never make it. Not because they aren't talented, not because they don't work hard, but because they're missing something. Something that is actually hiding in plain sight. You see it in every top athlete, a switch they flip when the competition starts. Some call it intensity, some call it aggression, and others, they call it something else entirely. And if you don't have this thing, you'll always be a step behind. So what is this thing? Well, in today's video, I'll be revealing the most essential mindset shift that aspiring athletes need to make in order to reach the top. So let's get started. Quick one, if you want to know and be able to use the top mental tools that I train elite athletes in as their mental performance coach, then download my completely free guide, Game Ready, using the link below. Right, so what is this essential mindset shift? Well, let's talk about Jude Bellingham. Jude burst onto the scene as a teenager at Birmingham City. And from the very start, he was different. Not just because of his technical ability, his confidence, or his ability to dominate games way beyond his years, but because of how he carried himself. Off the pitch, people were stunned by how mature he was. He spoke like a veteran, held himself like a leader, and had the poise of someone 10 years older than he actually was. He was polite, well-spoken, and incredibly well-mannered. The kind of guy you'd think would never cause any trouble, and the kind of guy that dads would love their daughter to bring home. But step onto the pitch, and that version of Jude Bellingham doesn't exist. On the field, he's an absolute menace. He's aggressive, physical, and in your face. He'll celebrate in front of rival fans, wind up opponents, and just get overly physical to assert his dominance. But this isn't an accident. This is what makes Jude Bellingham so special. It's why he's able to walk into the biggest teams in the world and immediately own the pitch. Because he understands something that most athletes don't. You can be a nice person, but to dominate, you have to be a nasty performer. This is the shift all athletes need to make to become the very best version of themselves. At the elite level, it's not enough to just be talented. It's not enough to work hard. You need bite, you need controlled aggression, you need to bring a version of yourself that is ruthless, dominant, and completely locked into winning. And look, this isn't a new concept. The origins of sport weren't about competition in the way that we see it today. They were about survival. Gladiators in the Colosseum weren't trying to play fair. They were trying to be the guy who would actually walk out alive by any means necessary. And look at jousting. That wasn't a friendly game. That was two warriors trying to literally break each other in half. Many of the early forms of sport weren't about winning trophies. They were about who could withstand pain, who could fight the hardest, and who could do whatever it took to win, even if it meant taking another man's life. And the nice guys, they didn't survive. They got injured. They got killed. And while today's sports aren't fights to the death, the mentality is still the same at the very top. If you don't have that controlled aggression, if you don't have that edge, then you'll be the one who gets eaten alive. For example, a Premier League Academy player that I was working with last year was once told by his manager that he needs to be more of a see you next Tuesday if he was going to make it and get a pro contract. That's literally what coaches are seriously wanting of young athletes today. But a lot of coaches that I speak to today say that the upcoming generation is soft. There's not enough killers out there anymore. And if you don't learn to make this shift, then you'll always be playing catch up. But you might be asking, why is this mindset shift actually essential? Why can't you just rely on skill, hard work, and being a good teammate? Well, because at the elite level, talent is a given. Everyone is fast, everyone is strong, everyone is technically gifted. So what's the difference? Well, it's who's willing to step into that dark side when it matters most, and who's willing to win at all costs. So let's look at how this actually plays out in real competition. Firstly, psychological warfare. At the highest level, performance isn't just about ability, and as much as it's cliche, it's actually about mindset. The best athletes know how to intimidate, frustrate, and unsettle opponents before the game is even won. Just look at Jude Bellingham in big games for both Real Madrid and England. Not only is he scoring crucial goals, but he's getting in the faces of opposition players, riling up the crowd, and making sure that everyone knows he's in control. It's not just personal confidence, it's a deliberate strategy to throw others off their game. He wants to intimidate and wind up the opposition because this can cause a lapse in concentration from them. Or think about the GOAT of basketball, Michael Jordan. People talk about his skill and work ethic, but everyone knows deep down how ruthless he was. He trash talk opponents into submission, he embarrassed them in front of crowds, and he even bullied his own teammates at times to make them tougher. It wasn't just about playing well, it was about mentally breaking the competition. But here's the key. Off the court, Jordan was respected. His teammates might have feared him, but they also admired him. He wasn't just a competitor, he was a leader. The second way is through controlled aggression. Let's be clear, being a nasty performer doesn't mean being absolutely reckless. It means knowing when to bring fire and intensity to completely take over the game. And again, Bellingham is a perfect example of this. He's not dirty, he's smart. He knows when to throw himself into challenges, when to shove an opponent off the ball, or when to celebrate in front of rival fans. It's not just emotion, it's a statement. He's letting everyone know that I own this pitch. But then notice what happens after the game. He's the first to shake hands, to show respect, to carry himself with class. He knows that elite sport is about turning the aggression on and off at the right time. Another example is Kobe Bryant. The Mamba mentality wasn't about being nice. It was about dominating opponents with sheer willpower and intensity. He would go hard on every single play and player he came up against, always giving that killer state and attacking the game with an obsession that left no room for friendliness on the court. And then lastly, survival at the highest level. At the absolute top, every athlete is looking for an edge. And if you don't have that nastier side, you'll get eaten alive. Think about a sport like MMA. Two fighters can be respectful outside the octagon, but the second that cage door closes, it's war. If one fighter is too hesitant, too soft, or too nice, they're getting knocked out in a flash. But outside of the octagon, many top guys like Khabib and Paddy the Baddy are just measured, humble, and very down-to-earth guys. Because if they didn't have that balance, then they just end up self-destructing. In so many sports, we've seen athletes with immense talent struggle because they lacked that competitive bite. Players who coasted on ability in youth academies, but then got bullied out of the professional game when it became an actual battle every single week. The reality is the highest level of sport is controlled chaos. The best don't just survive it, they thrive in it. That's why this balance matters. Be a great person, be humble, be respectful, but when it's time to compete, flip that switch and be absolutely ruthless. So how do you actually build this nice person, nasty performer mindset? How do you learn to flip the switch and become ruthless in competition whilst also keeping your respect and discipline off the field? Well, let's break it down. Firstly, train your aggression, but keep it controlled. Most athletes are taught to be very disciplined, but very few are taught how to use aggression as a weapon. Jude Bellingham doesn't just play with skill, he plays with fire. He gets stuck into tackles, he gets in opponents' faces and refuses to back down, but he never crosses the line into recklessness. So how can you build this? Well, ask yourself these questions. What are the markers of controlled intensity when I'm on the field? When have I played too passively in key moments? What stopped me from engaging more? How do I react when a game gets physical or heated? The answers to these questions will vary massively depending on your sport and even your position, so really think deeply about it. And with those answers, you'll have a clearer picture of what behaviors would actually best allow you to embody this controlled aggression. For example, a middle distance runner needs to remain mentally fierce, digging deep in the final few meters, whilst not losing form or panicking though. Their aggression comes through their relentless drive towards the finish line, pure intensity, but without burning out or losing their technique. This is a difficult balance, don't get me wrong, but the more intentional you can be along with regularly practicing it, then you'll become a master of this over time. And then the second thing is to master the art of psychological warfare. Now, this isn't necessarily about being dirty or disrespectful, it's about using your presence and your mentality to get inside your opponent's head and then make them question their own game. Again, Jude Bellingham is a prime example of this. He doesn't just play football, he plays with an attitude that radiates his confidence. His presence alone is enough to make opponents hesitate, and it can shift the momentum of a match in his favor. When you reflect on how you handle competitive situations, think about how you actually carry yourself in tough moments. Do you let frustration show, or do you stay completely unfazed and composed? Being mentally strong in the heat of competition can make all the difference. So think and ask yourself, have you ever mentally broken an opponent before, whether through subtle intimidation or just sheer confidence? If so, how did you actually do this? Observing how the top competitors in your sport handle pressure and use their presence to dominate can also give you very valuable insights into how to harness this power for yourself. To start incorporating this into your game, it's important to walk onto the field with complete certainty. Own your space from the very first moment and make sure that your body language exudes that confidence. When an opponent tries to talk trash to you or provoke you, don't react emotionally. Instead, maintain a calm, collected demeanor. Maybe even throw in a smirk and move on. This can disarm them and put you in control of the mental game. And when you make a big play, don't be afraid to celebrate with conviction. Let your opponent feel your presence and see that you are on a different level to them. The mental aspect of sport is just as important as the physical, and using psychological warfare effectively can make you an even more formidable opponent. Then thirdly, you need to develop an alter ego. Top athletes don't just show up to play, they completely transform when it's game time. Again, as we've said before, Jude Bellingham is like two completely different people on and off the field. He's a charming gentleman off it, but then an absolutely cocky bastard on it. This shift in mindset is critical to his success, and it's something that every athlete can use. This alter ego isn't just some shiny tool, it's a mental shift that can give you a clear competitive edge. And if you want to seriously craft your own alter ego to dominate the competition, then check out this next video here.